incredibly remote. And not only that, but the people who live there, they never believed that the reward was real. They never saw any advantage in giving up Osama bin Laden because they would have been excommunicated from their own tribes. They couldn't have continued to live in their own area. They wouldn't have had a future. Their children and their families wouldn't have had a future. So it was never worth it to them to give him up. And, you know, I have been told by a number of highly placed and confidential sources, Russ, that the U.S. has been close to getting Osama bin Laden for the past month, and we have stepped up operations against him. There have been some very significant operations just in the last few days, and on the special operations side, the very highest levels of forces that we have been activated and been involved in this operation. You know, that area is so difficult to get to, but it's one that we've been gaining familiarity with over time, just as learning more and more. We've been learning more and more about them and how to operate in those conditions, and that would definitely have helped in this case.
Sitting next to you, of course, is Bob Orr, our correspondent with a specialist on the war on terror. Bob, how surprised are you that this happened right now? It's 11 o'clock on a Sunday night. Again, highly unusual for the president to make a statement, to call for a statement at this point. As someone who covers this, who talks to a lot of folks, how surprised are you?
Russ, this is a big, big win, as Lara said, for intelligence operations. This proves that the intelligence in the region is robust, it's good, they had actionable intelligence, and they moved. It's very important that it comes at a time when the war on terror in the Pakistan-Afghanistan region was getting a bit bogged down in politics. The Pakistanis were not happy about all the drone strikes. They had asked us to kind of pull back a little bit. This gives us a chance, I think, to reassert on that front against core al-Qaeda. And as Lara made the point, and others have made the point, bin Laden is the spiritual leader. He is the center of the core. And now this leaves in his wake Ayman Zawahiri and some others who the U.S. would also like to get. But this gives us a restart in a campaign that it was in some danger, I would say, of being sidetracked politically. This isn't an end. People can celebrate this. This is not an end. We have very real enemies on a number of fronts, I think, in Yemen and in Somalia, and also still in the Pakistan-Afghanistan region. But this is a huge win for the U.S., and I don't think anyone can take that away from us. And most importantly, if the information is right that bin Laden's body is in U.S. custody, this will rob his followers of any kind of sacred shrine to worship at, and that's also an important point.
And rob them of any doubt about whether or not this is in fact true.
And give us proof.
That's right. That's exactly right. That's why it's so important.
Yeah.
Bob and Lara, stand by. I want to remind folks at home it is coming up on 11 o'clock. It's now at 10:56. 10:56, breaking in that we are in CBS News special coverage. CBS News has confirmed that Osama bin Laden has been killed, and we are waiting for the President of the United States. He is expected to make a statement very shortly. Right now we want to go to our terrorism consultant, Mr. Juan Zarate. Juan, good evening to you.
Good evening, Russ. How are you?
I'm doing just fine. What are you hearing tonight?
Well, this is a great evening. I think Laura and Bob have it absolutely right. Bin Laden is reported to be dead. U.S. troops seem to have captured his body, which suggests that the Special Operations Forces were on his trail. And certainly this is great news for the United States. It ends a key chapter in the war on terror. And as I've said often, you cannot imagine the end of al-Qaeda without... I think this is a key moment in the war on terror. It won't end terrorist threats. As note, you have threats coming from Yemen, the North African region, but this is a key moment. We have to remember as well that there have been internal divisions within al-Qaeda over the last couple of years, questions as to whether or not al-Qaeda was moving the global Sunni extremist movement in the right direction. And they've been somewhat on the sidelines in the wake of these Arab revolutions. And so the death of bin Laden could begin an unwinding or collapse of the broader Sunni extremist movement. So I think this is not just important symbolically, but it starts perhaps a domino effect within the al-Qaeda global movement itself.
Well, if you would give us a timetable. Of course, Osama bin Laden has been on the FBI's most wanted list since 1998. Give us an idea of how far he goes back, how far he's been on the U.S. radar, and how long we've been looking for him.
Well, bin Laden, of course, goes back to the Afghan Mujahideen days when he was a financier for much of the Arab Mujahideen fighting the Soviet Union in Afghanistan in the 80s. But he really, in the 1990s, converted himself into a global terrorist. And in 1996, issued his famous fatwa, his war against America, reiterating that in 1998, his fatwa, his war against all American citizens, followed then by the embassy bombings in East Africa, the USS Cole attack in 2000, and then, of course, the 9/11 attacks. Bin Laden has been a central figure, ideologically, symbolically, and strategically for this al-Qaeda movement since the mid-90s. And I think seeing his death is a critical end to a key chapter in the war on terror.
Juan Zarate, we'll be back to you in just a bit. I want to remind folks at home it is coming up on 11 o'clock Eastern Time. I'm Russ Mitchell from CBS News headquarters in New York. We are having a special report right now telling you that President Obama will announce in a few minutes that Osama bin Laden, the leader of al-Qaeda,